I promised you a while ago that Marvel was going to up the craziness scale with these What If episodes, and episode 4 did not disappoint. So stick around because this episode breakdown has a lot of implications for the rest of the MCU moving forward, as well as a lot of really cool Easter eggs. This is the after credits scene. Okay, where to begin with this episode? There was a ton of stuff going on. There was evil Doctor Strange. There was time loops. There was some MCU version of a Pokemon / Magic the Gathering convention going on right in the middle of this episode. We're going to break down all this stuff, just starting with the overall premise of this episode. Again, I don't really think that Marvel doubled down or really said, that this was the what if. I think there was a lot of other things that could have attributed to that, other than what if Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands. This idea that Christine dying, his heart being let go, so to speak, was the reason that he ended up becoming Doctor Strange in the first place, that he was tracking down all these time variants and all these different things. Maybe that was it. The part that confused me about that was when the episode is going back and showing you things in the cartoon world, in the multiverse world, that we've seen in the MCU world. The scene in Doctor Strange where he puts on the Eye of Agamotto and reads from the Book of Cagliostro and ends up doing the time warp with the apple. As he is going beyond his boundaries, Wong and Mordo show up to stop him. In this episode, however, in this what-if scenario, it is not Mordo and Wong, it's Wong and the Ancient One. Now, maybe that's just because they couldn't get Chiwetel Ejiofor to reprise his role, but that hasn't stopped them in the past from putting somebody else, voice-wise, in that role. So I don't really know why they did that, other than there was some other kind of what-if at play here, that in this universe, there's little things that just didn't happen the same way. Maybe they had to do with Doctor Strange and something that he did. Maybe he gets to Kamar-Taj earlier than he would have normally, or maybe the Ancient One finds him instead of Mordo finding him in town. I'm not really sure, but I know that little change really kind of threw me for a loop and made me wonder if the whole what-if premise at the beginning was really just about him and Christine, or if there was something deeper at work there. I also say that because there were a lot of other things that happened in this episode that were tie-ins, not only to previous episodes, but things moving forward, and we're going to talk about that at the end. So stay tuned for all of that, because there's some theories that I'm going to throw out here about as close to some predictions as I'm going to get with this series, and I'm really interested to see what you guys think about it. First off, a long-standing theory of mine was confirmed in this episode, which is the Watcher is not just narrating each individual episode as some character for the show, but the Watcher is narrating interconnected episodes, because in this episode, he gives some narration that refers back to other things, that he is showing us specific scenes for specific reasons, and showing us how these things interact and how they affect the rest of the world. So, again, just with that little nod and those few lines, we're learning that Marvel is setting us up as fans, maybe not just for the Watcher, but for the MCU as a whole moving forward. We're getting some multiverse rules and some things that are going to play out later on. Again, stick around for the end of this episode because I got a lot of things to lay on you. But the Watcher narrates across not just this one episode, but he refers back to some things, and even has an interaction with Doctor Strange at the end that refers to some other multiverse theories that I have. And there is a video forthcoming about the multiverse and some of the rules moving forward, because I'm slowly coming up with a theory there that I really want to put in video form. So, again, some other things that we got in this episode that were different. We learned several things about the Doctor Strange universe, and it made me really excited for the new Doctor Strange movie because this episode was crazy just in and of itself. You know, the whole general idea that if Christine had died and Strange went down this path where he was trying to revive her, that he would do some really crazy things, and we saw some of those weird, crazy things pop up in this episode. It really made me excited for the live-action movie coming, and from everything I've heard, Sam Raimi is just bringing an extra level of crazy to this movie. So, what Doctor Strange would do and how that would affect the multiverse was a really interesting twist, and we learned a whole lot of things, but a lot of what I want to focus on is the new things that we learned about the MCU. Because like I said before, if some of these things are happening, if all of this is happening within the MCU, even though it's happening in another reality, it means that these things are around in our reality. We just haven't come in contact with them. So things like that tentacled creature that was in the first episode that Captain Carter fights, that also pops up in this episode, another interconnected piece that I think Marvel is just really sowing some seeds here. The leaves, the Genesis leaves that they go after in the T'Challa episode that are in the Collector's collection. We haven't seen those things in the live action movies, but they've popped up in this animated stuff. That stands to reason that those things are in the MCU, but where are they going to pop up? Are we going to see them again? I think so. But I think they're just laying the framework and doing some world building here, and we're getting little pieces of it. One little piece of that is the idea that there are absolute points within the timeline, within the multiverse, things that no matter how many times you look at it, no matter what happens, who does it, it never changes. And this idea that the death of Christine in that reality was something that never could be changed, opened up a lot of different questions. One, okay, so in that reality, there was an absolute point, but does that prevent you from going to another reality and bringing that person back? Theoretically, no, but we haven't crossed that bridge yet. So you know that there are things that have to happen, that there's such thing as destiny or fate, something like that. I don't know what they're going to call it in the MCU, but there are points that you cannot tamper with, and if you do, something really, really bad happens. Remember that idea as we get to the end of the episode here. Another thing was this idea of the absorption of beings. You know, Doctor Strange resorts to gaining power by absorbing people. We've seen some of that in WandaVision, where Agatha pulls power from some of these other witches, and she's trying to do the same thing to Wanda. Maybe it's the same kind of idea. I tend to think so, but we were introduced to all these different creatures that I am certain are some deep dive Easter eggs that I just didn't have the time to go into. There's some crazy stuff there that I would love to see your reviews and your ideas in the comments there of some stuff that popped up. There were so many mythical creatures that popped up. It was just kind of Marvel saying, yeah, these exist. Yeah, these exist. Yeah, these exist. And I think with Shang-Chi opening soon, even in the trailer, we got the teasing of some mythical creatures. And so I think we're going to get to see a lot more of that moving forward. The creature from the first episode, the fight with Captain Carter, the tentacle creature that is summoned by Red Skull, pops up in this episode. And it's in this universe. It was in Captain Carter's universe. Stands to reason it's going to be in ours somewhere as well. So that's going to be really cool to see moving forward what they do with that. The character of Oben, if you just did a quick Google search, that character, even though they insinuated it, is actually Cagliostro. And so we saw him. I thought the idea of him having heterochromia, which is the two different colored eyes, was a really cool tease, a nod. I'm sure some people will say, oh, well, that means he's a mutant or there's something there. Who cares? They're going to pop up eventually. I'm just along for the ride on that one. But Cagliostro, seeing him in the multiverse stands to reason. He's somewhere out there in the live action universe, and maybe all this episode was just teases for some other stuff. Having said that, let's dive into some Easter eggs. The end of this episode really left me just like, oh, that was dark. That was just is what it is. We kind of learned that universes can be destroyed, not just pruned. So does that have any effect on what Kang did? Again, I have some theories there that I'm kind of working out and putting together, and we will talk about those in another video. But we ended this episode with this universe just being destroyed. I kind of like sometimes when things go wrong. I liked the ending of Infinity War, except for the fact that I had to wait a year to see how they were going to resolve it. But I liked the fact that the bad guy won. I like the fact that all the bad things that they're trying to prevent sometimes happen. And how do you deal with those things? Because not everything works out great. Sometimes heroes mess up, and sometimes heroes fall, and things happen. And so this idea that, look, in this universe, as well as the assumption is other universes, things are going to happen, and universes and what ifs that branch off sometimes just have an end, just like a regular tree branch. There are spots where tree branches end, and so what that means for the world moving forward is anybody's guess, but I thought it was cool that they introduced that idea, and then they just left us with it. They just rolled credits and had you kind of deal with the fact that sometimes things don't work out. That leads me right into some of our Easter eggs. Again, in the What If series, you can throw out anything. You don't have to explain it. For instance, the apartment complex or the building that Christine lives in is called the Barton, as in Clint Barton. I thought that was really, really cool. Just a random nod to Hawkeye. Now, whether or not that comes in someplace else is anybody's guess. But just that little throwaway, like, oh, hey, I recognize that name, was really cool. I am sure there very well could be, oh, it's a writer for the What If series. It's a producer. It could be anything. But I noticed it because I thought it was Hawkeye related, and maybe it's something else. You guys can tell me in the comments and prove me wrong. That's great. The other one, Leslie Bibb, the actress who is the news anchor for WIHIH from the first Iron Man movie, and she pops up in a couple other places as well, was a news anchor, and she was actually credited at the beginning of this episode. It's literally a blink and you miss it moment, but as Doctor Strange is drinking at the bar, thinking that he has seemingly protected Christine from dying, he sees a news segment on a TV screen that is anchored by Leslie Bibb's character, and finding out that her apartment complex exploded. So that was just an interesting little, hey, let's bring her back for this, and she's part of the universe. I actually like the idea that Marvel is trying to use the same actors for the roles, even if they're not live action. I think that speaks volumes about Marvel and their commitment to the characters, which is a really great thing. It kind of gave me warm fuzzies. There were several things there. I am curious, and maybe we'll do some kind of giveaway or some kind of nod. The characters that Strange pulled power from, that he absorbed, the few that I was really interested in was the Goblin, right at the beginning, the first little character that he pulls up, the little gnome. The second one was the Cockroach, the very second one, where he got his cloak from. He goes, hey, nice cloak, and he grabs the cloak. And then the Six-Eyed Raven. That Six-Eyed Raven, they made a big deal about those first couple of them, and then they just blew through a bunch of them, which I'm sure were Easter eggs. But those three were very interesting to me, mainly because they took a little bit of time to show them to you. Usually, movie-wise, if it's just an Easter egg, they're going to blink and you miss it, it's gone. Little throwaway thing, but if they're wanting you to notice something for some reason, they usually take a little more time. And of course, the Goblin could have just been a throwaway one as well, because they were really showing you how Doctor Strange was absorbing their powers. But again, you're making choices animation-wise, and why did they pick that one? Why did they spend so much time on those three? That was very interesting to me, so I'm very curious. Wrapping us up, and I'm calling these Easter eggs episode breakdown things, but here's my theory for this whole episode. It's a very dark episode. It had a lot of crazy in it. I mean, right down to the universe unraveling and the black goo that you saw. I think a lot of these elements are going to pop back up in Doctor Strange 2. Now, there were a couple of other things in here that I saw from other places that we're going to talk about in just a second, but in Doctor Strange 2, I think we're going to get a lot more, obviously, we're building the world out, but the multiverse of madness just opens up all these different things that can happen. And this idea that universes can be destroyed, not just pruned, but destroyed. The idea that, especially with the Watcher, that the multiverse has always been there, but that something with Kang and Loki and Sylvie, there's something else there rather than just that's where the multiverse started. I think the multiverse has always existed, but maybe we were just cut off from it. And then this What If series is just giving us all of the different scenarios and introducing us to the rules of the multiverse. So when we see those things, we understand them a little better. And then, of course, as the series progresses, you get more of those elements. The one that really threw me for a loop that I think is very interesting and has a lot of ramifications for the movies moving forward was the line, "He's not the only Doctor Strange in the universe." Now, we're going to cross some threads here between Doctor Strange 2 and Spider-Man No Way Home. This is not the only Doctor Strange in the universe. So, we got that in the form of the Ancient One actually splitting this one timeline into two timelines. So, she was aware of the multiverse. She was able to split that timeline almost like a split end at the end of your hair. But I imagine, take a timeline, and then within that timeline you have little branches, and then the big branches go off into other universes. I think we're going to get a lot more explanation there, but the fact that there was more than one Doctor Strange in that universe, then couple that with the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer where the Doctor Strange that Peter Parker walks into in the Sanctum Sanctorum, where it's covered with snow and he's in warm clothes. It was just very awkward and off-putting. And I know Doctor Strange is this impulsive kind of guy and he has this bravado, but it just didn't seem to make sense to me that he would willingly cast a spell that would break the timeline or have the ability to break the timeline. I wonder if there's more than one Doctor Strange here, if we're going to see some of that played out, if the absorption of other characters is part of what's going on there. Maybe we see that in the Doctor Strange movie, maybe we get it in the Spider-Man movie. But the line from the Spider-Man movie that made me go connect it with this What If episode was when Doctor Strange in the Spider-Man trailer tells Peter that you are living two lives. That you're trying to be Spider-Man, but you're also trying to be Peter Parker. You're trying to do these two things. And then we also get some scenes from the Mirrorverse, but we also get some scenes, maybe that's the multiverse being opened in this iteration of the story, but also Peter being cast out of his Spider-Man costume and his astral form of Peter Parker being pulled out of that as well. All of those little elements, and then you throw in this What If episode right after this Spider-Man trailer has been released, and all these different pieces, to me, started adding up. I think it's just a taste of what's coming in the live-action Marvel universe, is that we're getting little teases of these things in this show, and we're going to see them later on. And all of these things, you have to remember, these things are part of the MCU. So when we see them here, they have ramifications for what goes on in our universe, and the things that we're learning are going to apply in the other world as well. So when you get lines or characteristics from Doctor Strange or the Ancient One or somebody, giving you the rules of the multiverse where they are living in two timelines, where that's not the only Doctor Strange, I would kind of perk up and take notice here. The idea that there is an absolute point. I wonder if in Spider-Man No Way Home, if this moment where Doctor Strange is seemingly casting a gentle spell, like, oh yeah, we can wipe everybody's mind, that it doesn't go awry because Peter is just, running off at the mouth and saying, oh, but I want this to happen, I want that to happen. But maybe, for whatever reason, the spell is a pretty normal spell, almost like It's a Wonderful Life. Like, all right, Peter, we're going to let you live this out and just see what happens. And if you want that, great. But that Strange comes up against an absolute point in their timeline where they try to change something and it just explodes things. That it creates some extra timelines within their timeline. These little, there's 2 Peter Parkers, there's 2 of this, there's 2 of that. All these things come in. There's a million different directions they could go, but it was very exciting to see all these bits and pieces to kind of like get some nods to other things and start piecing things together. To me, in a pretty straightforward way, not just a, well, what if this and what if that? Although it'd be a very meta moment if they did those things simply for the fans to go, what if this and what if that? All in all, I think it was a really great episode. I applaud Marvel for the risk-taking in some of these episodes, not just in the what ifs, because you can throw this off in a bunch of different directions and say, well, it's just a what if. It's just a random scenario, so it doesn't really matter. But in the episode itself, just ending it and telling a story where things don't turn out well, just boom, things are bad. The universe gets destroyed and it's done. And sometimes bad things happen and you can't do anything about them. Was really, really, wasn't refreshing. I kind of ended the episode going, whoa, that's it? And then I stopped for a second, took a breath and just went, whoa, like they really went there. They stopped the episode cold turkey and said, yeah, that's it. And if you're going to end the story there's really no other place to end it because the universe is gone. I mean, if Doctor Strange did that, sometimes universes just take care of themselves. And you either live with the decisions that have been made or you destroy the universe. And sometimes there's no coming back from it. So I'm curious what you guys thought about it. It was a very emotional episode, a very intense episode. And again, there's more crazy coming. They just keep upping the ante every week. I'm curious as to some other Easter eggs or some other things that you guys saw that were interesting to you. There was a lot of Eye of Agamotto front and center in this episode, and clearly a lot of these things happened in this what if episode before giving Thanos the stone and it being destroyed and all those kind of things. So we got to see what would happen if he had the time stone. Don't know if that really plays into Spider-Man No Way Home, but seeing Doctor Strange with the Eye of Agamotto was really, really off-putting, and I wonder why he had that. And maybe we're already back in time somehow. I really don't know. Maybe it's a projection. Maybe it's this multiple timeline stuff is already going on, and we're going to get into some weird time loop type stuff. So anybody's guess, but I'm really excited about it. Excited to hear what you guys think. As always, like and subscribe to our channel. And if you are subscribed, please hit the share button and share this video all across the multiverse. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.